When she finally dropped her bantering air, it was to reveal that her errand had been to look over old files of the local newspapers, not so old, really, but from the 1st of March to the 1st of August, and to look in the proper section for someone either advertising for a room in our vicinity, the reply to be sent in care of general delivery, or for a room advertised to let, furnished. Although just why anybody would come voluntarily into this vicinity is a mystery to me, she finished. There you are. That's what he wanted, and I never suspected that anywhere in the world there were so many bright, attractive rooms, nicely furnished, run water, use parlor, rent reasonable. She had 8 in all, copied out in her square modern script, and she laid them on my lap. Only one of them concerned a room in our immediate vicinity, and I could not see how it could possibly have any bearing on our situation. I read it over twice. Wanted, by trained nurse, furnished room near General Hospital. Must have telephone in house. I can't see how that could mean anything, I said. No? Then you don't know our Bertie. If you did, you would realize that our murderer, masquerading as a lady, has probably been living in that room and stroking fevered brows between crimes, so to speak. The telephone, of course, is pure camouflage. Well, I've done my job. I have to save my man, he's a poor thing but mine own. And now I'm going home to take a bath. Writing this record and piecing together from this and that the whole story of our crimes, I have often thought of that visit of Helen's and wondered exactly what would have happened had those angular notes of hers reached Herbert Dean and the police in time. But they did not. She was cheerful enough when she left me, apparently even gay. I heard her whistling as she went down the street, a gesture of bravado with which she often shocked the Crescent. She was fighting Jim's fight for him with a certain gallantry, as witnessed the night before. Yet she and Jim quarreled again that afternoon, and I think there is no question but that the 2 deaths which followed were due entirely to that. Possibly she knows it. It is a different Helen who now lives in the house nearest to the Crescent Gate. She still swaggers, but the old casual careless ways are gone. Even John, that suave and impassive police agent who was in the Wellington house as a butler, did not know what it was about. Although he was certainly suspicious, and I have never held Jim guiltless. He was in a bad state of nerves, irascible and impatient, and Helen was not a person to stand for either. However that may be, at 7 o'clock when Annie brought up my supper tray she was pop-eyed with information. Mrs. Wellington's gone again, miss. Gone? Gone where? That I can't say, miss. I believe they had a few words, and she just called a taxicab and went away in it. I must say it's a poor time to leave Mr. Jim, with him needing all the comfort he can get. All of which, as I have said, is not important. What was vitally important was that she carried away with her in her handbag those notes made at the library, and that she did not go to her usual hotel. When she was finally located, she really located herself. She still had the notes in her bag, having forgotten them completely, but they were useless then. I have wondered since what would have happened, or not happened, had Helen gone to the police that day with what she knew. The notes in her bag and her story of that Sunday night. But she did not. She was frightened, like all the rest of us. Would we have seen it all? Perhaps it was not possible even then, although Herbert Dean came closer than any of us to guessing the truth. But as Dr. Armstrong said afterwards, "Upon my word, Lou, if everyone on the Crescent had had a dose of some drug like hyoscine, and been so released from all his normal repressions that he'd had to tell the truth, we'd have saved some of these people. Not hyoscine perhaps, it causes fantasy, but something to put the brain sensors to sleep." All we needed was a little openness, but everybody was afraid. Which was true enough, for it was not until that evening, Tuesday, that I learned that Peggy from the Lancasters had had her purse snatched from her in no man's land on Sunday night, and had been so terrified to report it for fear of some reprisal that even our servants did not know it for a day or two. Here too Annie was my source of information. She came up to turn down my bed that night, and her mouth was set hard and tight. She had just heard the news, from Peggy herself. "She's a little fool, and I've told her so," she said. "Because, Miss Lou, whatever these police may think, and so far as I can see their thinking isn't getting them anywhere anyhow, the whole thing ain't what you'd call natural." Why did he bring the purse back? If that isn't the act of a lunatic, what is? And Peggy's story as related by Annie had indeed an unusual element. She had been at home that evening, she lived somewhere in the neighborhood. And as she had been late, which is a grave offense with us, she had taken the shortcut across no man's land. In the woodland behind the Wellingtons, where the path is shady for 200 feet or so, she had suddenly seen a man emerge from the shadows and come toward her. She was startled and stopped dead, but the man said, "Don't be afraid, please. I have no idea of hurting you."